50 wins up for the Marlins. But the main question, how good is this offense? This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK for listening to the pod. Hit subscribe, leave a review. This, of course, is your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. There is a YouTube channel. Guys, head on over there, hit subscribe. We're almost at 800 subscribers. And what I'd say is there's a lot of Braves fans commenting right now. Head on over there. I'm getting drowned out by the Bravos. Need some Marlins love in there. Guys, this is Wednesday's episode. It's a delayed episode. It should have been Tuesday's, but there were some scheduling issues last night. So, the UK GOAT is in the house as promised. Sean Barrett, how are we doing, brother?
I'm not bad, Pete. This Cardinals series has certainly made me feel better. I think if we'd spoke after the Atlanta series, I would have a completely different mood.
Yeah, it was painful, wasn't it? Thank God the Marlins are out of Atlanta, and thank God they're not seeing them again until, mid-September. So 1-9 versus the Bravos. It was painful. I had to do a post-game recap on Sunday, an emergency pod after, Jazz exiting the game. And boy, oh boy, the Marlins were just spanked in that series. I think the Braves are just scorching hot right now. I'm intrigued if they can keep that rolling. History kind of says to me anyway, that July might be a touch too early. They might have peaked too soon, let's say. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, they are the cream of the crop, aren't they? They are head and shoulders the best team in the league right now. But, yeah, you're right. Who wants to be the best team in July? You need to be the best team in October. So we'll see how the season progresses. But right now, yeah, they certainly would be a scary opponent in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. If and we don't match up well seemingly with the Bravos at the moment. And, listen, the plan is, there's a good shot the Bravos are going to be the one seed potentially in the NL. The Marlins not winning the division, of course, on the back of that. So they end up in the wild card round. There's a decent shot that the Marlins are playing the Braves along the way here. So, Jazz already calling out saying this is a potential, I think, NLCS matchup. Jazz calling out, which I love to hear from Jazz, by the way. We don't match up well. We haven't matched up well, but no one's matching up well with the Bravos. So I think it's one of those series where you just kind of move on quickly. You just get out of there and you take it with a pinch of salt and you don't panic after 3 games. I know they got spanked, but you roll on. And actually, this is the beautiful thing, mate. They roll into a series back at home where they've played great. I think that's one of the key things this season, mate, just more generally, is like they've seemed to struggle at times at home. And, struggled to even have a winning record at home and maybe didn't have quite the right offense makeup, let's say, to kind of deal with the conditions. But this year they are playing really nicely at home. They come back home. They're facing a struggling Cardinals team. But, it's still the Cardinals. They've still got a ton of studs, particularly offensively, up and down that lineup. And, game 1 was a little bit hairy with a comeback win. But, game 2, a 15-2 spanking of the Cardinals, mate. The Marlins have never spanked the Cardinals 15-2, I'm pretty sure of that. They're such a fundamentally sound ball club, historically. But this year, the Cardinals, something's not quite right. Culture, clubhouse, something's just off. But to see the Marlins doing that to the Cardinals, for me, it's truly blown me away, to be honest, mate. What about you?
Yeah, certainly. I think we spoke before about how my hatred for the Cardinals, and I think it is just because they have so fundamentally just deconstructed the Marlins over the last 10, 15 years. But obviously Molina's gone. Wainwright stayed one more year, tried to stretch it out one more year. Probably not a good idea. So I think going into this game, as soon as I saw that he was starting it was a case of this is a must-win game. And coming, like you said, coming off the Braves series, but if you look at it, come out a bit and look at it and say 3 games against Boston, 3 games against Atlanta, and then 4 against the Cardinals, no matter what happens now with the rest of this series, that's a 500 record through those 3 games. If you looked at this in spring and looked over this stretch of period of time, which is what we've been calling the hard part of the schedule for so long.
Yeah.
The Marlins are hanging. They're playing well, and that's if they lose the next 2 games. There's nothing stopping them from going and winning this series or even sweeping it at this point. The confidence is high. The Cardinals, I mean, how high can their clubhouse be right now? They're not used to this. That's the main thing.
It is.
They're so used to winning their division, having a winning record, making the playoffs. They're only 7 games under 500, but if you look at any Cardinal information on social media, it's they're firing everybody. It's the worst case scenario in the world. So right now the Cardinals are a bit lost. They're not used to this. They're not used to these struggles, and it'd be interesting to see whether or not they can recover from it or whether they're ultimately going to be sellers.
That is going to be one of the big questions. They're one of the big teams in terms of like question marks around them, and irrespective of selling. Like the Cardinals clearly have an issue with some pitching. They need some arms. They need some big league arms. They need some high quality arms, and they've got too many sticks. Like there's some that you rate more highly than others, but overall the Cards, they've just got too many similar guys, I think, and they should look to move 1 or 2 of them and acquire some pitching. We spoke about it. Probably since the off season, really, these clubs match up. Even now, heading into July, through into the deadline, like they still match up. I spoke about it in the Everyday as well here. It wouldn't shock me if they made a trade during this series. To be honest with you, like if the Marlins pummel them, let's say the Marlins sweep the Cardinals, that's 4 L's on the spin there for the Cards. What's to say they don't find a way to make a trade? I'm pretty sure that happened in a series, not for the Marlins, but did that happen in an Angels-Rockies series or something where mid-series, mid-game, a trade was executed and there you go. The Rockies were like, actually, we're cooked. The Angels were trying to add. Who knows? But to your point, though, mate, about the Cards, they're normally just such a machine, a well-oiled machine. And to see the Marlins fully dismantle, and okay, I get it, Waino isn't the same dude anymore. We saw him in London, mate, and like he struggled in London badly. A lot of pitchers have struggled in London, but it's clear that Waino is not that guy anymore. And listen, it was pretty much like BP at some points in that first inning in particular with that curveball, mate. It was just sitting up there. I think maybe 7 of the first 8 Marlins hitters had a hit. Like it was just hit after hit after hit. And actually, they only scored 3 runs in that first inning. And you're thinking, if they let them off the hook, in the end, they didn't. 15-2, mate. But to dismantle the Cardinals like that, I mean, I've never seen anything like that, to be honest with you. And, 4th of July game, day game, it did come. There was some collateral damage, though, mate. And that's Jonathan Davis, where Jazz goes down. Big loss. Jonathan Davis, you think it's going to take over at center, mate. He's then stretched fully out for a grab and ends up hurting his knee. We're not quite sure of the prognosis. X-rays were clear, so he hasn't broke a bone. But MRI pending. Is it muscular? Is it, anything? It didn't look good, though. And in a game where you end up winning 15-2, they're always the even tougher injuries to take, where it happens in a situation and you think, man, you could have just let that ball land and really the outcome would not have changed. But we'll talk about Dane Myers, but just overall, because I'm a little bit higher maybe on Davis than others, where do you sit on Davis in terms of his impact to the Marlins at this point? Because I've been high. I'm not sure everyone's as high as me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case of he was the next man up and performed that role. When he came over, it was a case of this guy is going to play good, decent center field defense, and we'll see what we get with the stick. I've always on the opinion that catcher, shortstop, and center fielder give me good defense, give me 85 WRC plus, and I'll be happy. Do it on league minimum as well. That always helps. Yeah, so that's pretty much what he brought in, and his bat was a little bit better than that, but that was mostly BABIP and luck. I think he was playing at the level more or less of what we could expect from him. And it is a case of it's another next man up situation, especially with Jazz down now, and that's going to be to the deadline at this point, isn't it? More than likely. So it's going to be interesting to see which way the Marlins go. Is it going to be Hampson again? I hope not. His not only is the stick not that interesting, his centre field defense, in my opinion, was poor. I'll be interested to see how he goes. Maybe there's a young guy that they bring up and see if they can catch lightning in the bottle.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Well, let's just briefly touch on Dane Myers, because I think this links into him. Let's start with the fact that he made his debut yesterday. So he came in and replaced JD as he exited. He went in and played center field. So we're all talking about Dane Myers, third base, Gene Segura. Let's get him out of here. I wasn't saying that, but that's, Marlins Twitter vibes. Dane Myers, let's get him in. Next thing is he's up and he's playing center field, making his debut, and struck out on his first plate appearance, but then goes 2 hits after that. I think both of those hits he ends up scoring as well. So a multi-hit day, plus I think both hits scored. I'm just gonna double check that because I might be wrong. Yeah, they did, and an RBI as well. So impressive start for Dane Myers. I do think this is the interesting part now, right? And this is what I put it out there on Twitter as well. It was an interesting decision because John Birdie's on the bench at that point. Birdie's played center field before. He's more than capable. Jesus Sanchez could theoretically slot into center field. So it's interesting that the decision was actually from Skip Schumacher. Let's get Dane Myers out there in center field for his debut. So I'm kind of sitting there thinking, okay, if JD is down, let's say JD misses the rest of up until the All-Star break, and let's hope that he's going to be back after the All-Star break. But that gives him the next, 5 games. There's a decent shot that Dane Myers is going to be the starting center fielder and get a ton of playing time here. I don't know. It's probably the sample size is too small, it's fair to say, after 3 plate appearances, mate. But, you can't ask for any more for a guy to come up in what will be an extremely nervous situation for him, go 2 for 3, both runs score, plus an RBI, and he's out there, doing his thing at center field. I mean, this would be a huge dub for the Marlins if they can actually find another guy that can produce, that was a minor league Rule 5 guy, former pitcher, only started really hitting in 2021. Absolutely wild. And this is, again, another example of why this year these Marlins are different. Because all other years, every top prospect would come in and flame. Now you're picking up scraps from other clubs, turn them into studs, and they're contributing at the major league level. Who are these Marlins?
Yeah, who are they? It is a case of, you see this all the time in baseball, June, July, August. It gets deep into the season and teams are bringing up these depth pieces. And then you see his stats and they're hitting like 280 with, good power. And you're like, who is this guy? I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
That happens everywhere except for the Marlins.
Yeah.
Or at least it doesn't feel like it anyway. It's been a long time. And yeah, with Myers, it is a case of he's played a little bit of centre field in AA this year. And then when he stepped up to AAA, it was pretty much predominantly first base and third. So I think that's where the Marlins kind of wanted to sort of, as he progressed, sort of put him in his role. But he can play centre field. And as you said, it's super small sample size. But it is a case of so far so good. We've seen before with Jazz how bad someone can look at the beginning playing centre field. So, it is a case of we can't say he's going to be a good centre fielder, but we can't also say that he's going to be a bad one. So time will tell. And yeah, if he keeps on hitting, I mean, he was hitting over 400 in AAA. He's currently hitting over 600 in the major leagues. Of course, that's not going to continue. But if he can, give the Marlins semi-decent centre field defense, 85 WRC plus, not hurt the team, then the other guys are going to have to go, isn't it? Yes, I'd like to see Jazz out there, obviously healthy, playing well. But the replacement for him is not going to be Jazz or Jazz level skills. So just play your role, do your job, and those timely hits will help. And the rest of the team are going to have to up the game and perform. Yeah.
What do you think the corresponding move might be if JD has to go down? Let's say he goes on the 10-day IL and they just say, listen, let that knee rest and heal until the All-Star break. What could you see be the corresponding move? I think you mentioned Hampson. I think there's also Xavier Edwards could and should be an option. Obviously, Peyton Burdick could be an option, who's been up to. Like, we're kind of seeing a cycle through the guys that have kind of gone up and down. If it was you, and I think this does pertain to how confident the Marlins are with Dane Myers' outfield defense, probably. But like I said, the indications there are they feel pretty comfortable with him at center field in a blowout game. So I guess that's the kind of caveat here. But where do you think they go with this if indeed it is an IL stint for JD?
I mean, realistically, I can actually see them going Hampson, just because he's that older player and you can trust him to do what he's going to do. It's not going to be great, but if it's going to be a bench role anyway, especially if they are going to keep Myers in the maybe not the starting lineup, but keep playing him more, 4 or 5 times a week, then Hampson is the better option, simply to be that day off guy, the bench bat, the replacement late into an inning, or whatever it is. If you're going to bring up an Edwards or even a Burdick, I mean, at this point, how much trust do I have in Burdick? I mean, not a great amount, to be honest. No. And then anyone else, I mean, I like Jake Mangum. I think I've said that plenty of times, but
yeah,
that's a 40-man situation, and I don't see them making any kind of move that way. So, unfortunately, it's likely to be Hampson, or at least that's where my mind is.
Yeah, and the other guy I didn't mention on the list either was Jacob Meyer. Obviously, it was, I guess, the most recent promotion. But, and that's, I mentioned this again on an earlier pod, what we're seeing with these guys that are being kind of shuttled up is their playing time is really limited when they're up. And we kind of saw that with Dane Myers too, where he's up, he sits on the bench for 2 days. The hottest hitter in AAA, but it doesn't matter. Like Skip's kind of like, he's taking more of a Braves approach with some, platoon elements in there, like clearly. But, that's the thing about the Bravos is you kind of know their lineup pretty much every day. The Marlins actually have had, I think, the second most the variance in lineup. So, but I think that's primarily driven by injuries, to be honest with you, rather than not. But I do feel that Skip's approach is very different to Donnie, where Donnie was like cycling guys all of the time. Whereas Skip's a bit more like, I've got my first team, righty, lefty, who's on the mound. And the other guys are kind of bench bats if they're not in that platoon. And I kind of like it, to be honest with you. You know your team. You kind of sprinkle in a little bit of day off here and there based on the platoons. But I like that approach, like the old Donnie days where you look at like the Sunday lineups, mate. I mean, we know this better than anyone as UK fans. I mean, it was like every Sunday, it was a white flag lineup. Like every bench player would be in there. Sandy would be starting. Sandy would, go 9, give up 1, and they'd lose the game. But Skip's approach is different, and I like the approach. What about you?
Yeah, it's a case of creating consistency, isn't it? And having people know their role, know their position, know their spot in the lineup. That carries value, knowing pretty much where you're going to be. And there's some movement with injuries and whatnot, as you said. But ultimately, Skip, to me, at least in the early part of his managerial career, is a guy that likes guys in that role. Like if you look at how he used his bullpen, it is a case of Skip has that reliability on these people. This is where I like you. You've performed well for me there. That's what I'm going to keep doing with you. I'm not going to mess you around too much. And so far, I mean, it's night and day, isn't it? Difference between Donnie and Skip.
It is.
And so far for Skip, it's working. And I think, there's, you do want to adjust the lineup depending on matchups, not just lefty righty, but also who might be on the actual mound and history numbers and all things like that. But sometimes people can get too cute with that. Like I like my sabermetrics, but sometimes it's just a little you're thinking too much. You're overthinking it too much. And it is a case of just play the guys where they know they're going to be playing and let them go out and do their game. And so far it's worked.
I think what you're saying to me, Sean, if I'm translating this correctly, is just put Coop in the 5-hole and leave him there. That's what you're telling me.
100%.
Let's talk about our good friends over, and a delayed ad here, so I apologize for that. But I'll tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel, running long on time here. But nevertheless, take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $2,000. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200. Almost said $200,000. Boy, oh boy. Bet $20 and you'll get $200 back in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line, over-unders, to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we're running long. I wanted to talk about the offense, but we're going to hit the pause button on that and talk about that in kind of part 2 of today's episode. So we're going to catch up on that. You did mention Skip, and it's night and day. I've got one final one for you here, and then we'll get out of here. Manager of the year conversations are starting to brew. We're a touch biased in some ways on this podcast, rightly so. Naturally, we're thinking Skip Schumacher should be in the running. If things ended today, who do you think would be the NL Manager of the Year? Like, there's obviously Skip's in the mix. You got the Reds that are absolutely trending and would win their division. You've got the D-backs as well. So there's, the Marlins clearly aren't winning their division at this point. But I guess Skip has to be in the running. It's probably one out of those 3, right, that are gonna be in the mix. Would you say if one of those 2 or both of those 2 win the division, they're likely to be ahead of Skip in the NL Manager of the Year running here?
I think so. I think winning a division is so important. And the thing is, it's Manager of the Year is a weird thing. It's not just it's usually expectations, isn't it? What did you do compared to our expectations? Like, the Braves can go and win 110 games and probably not even get a look in. Maybe they would actually, because the expectations are you've got this team and I could manage that team to the playoffs. So it is a case of expectations. And so when you look at Cincinnati, when you look at Arizona, like, were we really thinking about them in the preseason and thinking, locks for winning the division? Probably not. So no. I think Skip absolutely deserves to be there in the contention for it. I think I know that postseason doesn't matter, but if they make the playoffs, win a couple of series, that can't help but influence that decision. But to me, if Skip's high up in the nominations or if he wins it, to me, doesn't really matter. Doesn't change what I think of him as a manager. I don't need him to get that award for me to know that he's managed well this year and looks to be a very good manager, because right now that's all I can see.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. I mean, to that point, like, Donnie was Manager of the Year in 2020. I mean, he absolutely did deserve it at that point, but what did it actually mean overall? Kind of not too much. And like heading into 2021, it was a complete disaster. So, best manager maybe in 2020 due to dealing with that COVID situation, making the playoffs, winning a series. 2021, boy, oh boy, it was a train wreck. But the point you've made there is the correct one. Skip Schumacher has already proven to be, a very, very high quality manager. And the other thing as well, he's very good at building a staff. That's the other thing too. Like, he knows where to go to find the right guys, because it isn't just Skip. It boils down to the guy in the video replay room who's the best in the business. The Marlins have found the best replay guy out there. Do you remember last year, Sean? I mean, this might not just be last year, but for years, it feels like the Marlins were potentially the worst replay challenge team out there. Some of it was down to the fact that Major League Baseball review system was shocking. There was some calls that were absolutely terrible, but even that is just an indication of like where the Marlins have got sizably better than they were last year, down to just the ability to challenge at the right time and get them right and get them overturned. Like, that's part of it for Skip, is knowing who to turn to. We went to John Jay. I want John Jay on this staff. Best outfield guy out there, probably the hardest left pectoral muscle in Major League Baseball as well. But it's all just part of it, right? It isn't just what's happening on the field. Like, Skip, he has a clear vision and purpose in his mind, and he's built a really good staff around him, and the players are bought into it, mate. And I think that is fundamental to this Marlins team this year.
Yeah, 100%. It is a case of, like, Skip brought in guys that he's played with before or he's been around before. And that's not just because he wants his friends in there. It is a case of these are guys that he's had a lengthy career scrapping away and fighting away at trying to remain a Major League Baseball player. So the people and the players that he's been around, he's learned to harness these good people around him. He's first-time manager. So he was honest enough in an interview, I can't remember where, basically saying, look, I'm new to all this, so I'm going to bring in people to lighten my load. I want people I can trust, people that I know, good, sound baseball minds. I'm not going to be this head honcho guy raining down from the top. It's a collective of baseball brains, and so far so good.
And I guess the key retention too was Mel Stottlemyre Jr. as well. We have to call that out. You know, he was obviously a free agent in the offseason, and they managed to find a way to move forward and continue his stay, which was, you know, a big part of this. And I must say the Marlins rotation, after a bit of a tricky start, to be honest with you, the season, they weren't on all cylinders coming out of the gate. But I must say, as the years progressed, like, we're really starting to see, like, Jesus Luzardo is, we were waxing lyrical about him last year. And the crazy thing, and I think Eli put this up from his Fish on First account yesterday, Jesus Luzardo has got exactly the same numbers as he has from last year. And listen, if there's a guy that goes down in this all-star situation, I don't know how all the pitching matchups, where everyone's rest days are and et cetera, but there's a decent chance that Jesus Luzardo ends up as an all-star this year, because he's got to be one of the next guys up. Which almost feels a bit tough on Braxton Garrett because he's had such a great year. So, you know, the rotation has kind of hit its stride a bit as the year's gone on. And so's the offense too. The offense is really kind of clicking. I'm going to talk about that on episode 2 effectively today. Talk about the offense, the numbers, what we've seen. The Marlins are winning a ton of games. They are well positioned. But we're going to dig into some of the numbers and see some of the trends about this offense. So we'll do that soon. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. There could be a second listen dropping real shortly. Thanks to the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. I'll be back very, very soon. I'll see you then.